Hey, this is Justin with the Drip N Barbecue Company, and today we are making pulled beef. And if you've never had that before, it's kind of like pulled pork, only beefier. And it's really, really good. And we're gonna do the whole thing using the charcoal kettle and the Slow N Sear. So pulled beef really does taste like a hybrid between pulled pork and brisket, and there's a really good reason for that. Just like pulled pork comes from the shoulder of the pig, pulled beef comes from the shoulder of the cow. So you've got all that awesome connective tissue and collagen and marbling that if you cook it right, breaks down and just becomes awesome. Some say better than brisket. I'm just gonna leave that right there. So when you're making pulled beef, the best cut you can use is chuck roast. And when you go to pick one out, make sure you find one with plenty of marbling that runs through the muscle. That's really, really important. That's where your moisture and a lot of your flavor comes from. And at the same time, you want to avoid this hard fat that's on the outside. That doesn't do you any good. All that does is block the formation of bark and prevent salt from penetrating. And so before we do anything else, we're going to cut that off. But keep in mind, the most important thing is pick out one that has good marbling running through the muscle. So now that we've got all that extra fat removed off the roast, we're gonna go ahead and dry brine our meat. And what that means is basically just salting it. So for every pound of roast, you're gonna use about 1/4 teaspoon of table salt or 1/2 teaspoon of kosher salt. You can use a little bit more kosher salt. And just sprinkle that all over the surface of the meat and then let it sit for as long as possible, preferably overnight. But if that's not possible, just do it as soon as you can on the day you're gonna cook. But I always do mine overnight. I never used to do this until I met the owner of the Drip N Barbecue Company, Dave, and he showed me how to do this, and now I'm a firm believer. I think this is one of the keys to success with any cook. It dramatically enhances the flavor and helps the meat to retain moisture while it's in the cooker for long periods of time. So this is our typical low and slow setup with the Slow N Sear. As you can see, we have our drip pan on this side, and then over here we have the Slow N Sear with about 12 to 15 coals and a fire starter. I'm gonna go ahead and light that now. And now I'm just gonna give that a few minutes to burn down, and then I'll be back. So it's been about 15 minutes and my starter cube's already burned down. I went ahead and added more charcoal to fill up the Slow N Sear, and I added my water. When you add water, keep in mind you need to add exactly 1 quart. That's what it's designed to hold. And it needs to be as hot as possible. And the reason for that is just so that the water starts to evaporate and get on the meat early on in the cook. That water trough should last for 5 hours without needing to be refilled at all. Now I'm just gonna add a few hickory chunks and close this thing up, and we'll get the meat on. My target temperature for this cook is about 250 degrees. So to get that, I'm gonna start out by opening my vents 100% of the way open, both top and bottom, until I get to about 175 to 200 degrees. And then I'm gonna cut them back to about halfway open. which is a little more than I would normally do, but it's a little bit colder than it normally is here. And so I'm just gonna make that adjustment, and if I need to come back and revisit that, I will later. So this is what everything looks like all set up. We've got our chuck roast down over the drip pan. We've got a temperature probe off at least 2 inches away from the actual meat itself, so it doesn't pick up any of that ambient temperature off that cold meat. We want an accurate reading there. And then we've got a food probe that's stuck right in the middle of that chuck roast, so we can get the temperature in the thickest part of that meat. So I thought now would be a good time to go over our game plan for the cook. For the first part of the cook, we're gonna cook at 250 degrees, just exactly like you saw it. And we'll do that to get some smoke flavor on the meat. And then once we get to about 160 degrees internal inside the chuck roast, really we're looking for the point where the outside bark is set, so we know it won't wash off in foil. Once we get to that point, we're actually gonna take the chuck roast and wrap it in foil with a little beef broth and seal that up. Put it back in the cooker, at which point we'll raise the temps inside the cooker to about 300 degrees and let that cook until the chuck roast internal temp reaches about 205 degrees, or until the point where when we put our probe into the side of that meat, it goes in and out like warm butter. That's what you're looking for when it comes to cooking barbecue meat. You want it to get to the point where it's probe tender. And once we've reached that point, we'll pull the meat out of the cooker and wrap it in towels and put it in an ice chest and let it rest for anywhere from 1 to 3 hours. 1 at the minimum, you know, 3 or 4 at the maximum. At that point, we'll pull it out and see what we have. So we're about 4 hours into this cook, and we have definitely hit the stall. The meat hit 153 degrees about an hour ago, and in that past hour, it's actually dropped by about 2 degrees. So I went ahead and stirred the charcoal, and it looks like we have about a half a Slow N Sear left, which is exactly what we'd expect. So I'm gonna go ahead and add more charcoal. I'm gonna take the chuck roast. I did the scratch test on it earlier. That bark is just fine. It's gonna hold up fine in the foil. So I'm gonna take the chuck roast and I'm gonna put it in foil with a little beef broth. And then I'm gonna raise the temperature inside the cooker to about 300 degrees by opening up the vents a little bit. And I'm gonna let it cook like that until it hits about 205. I'll start checking it for probe tenderness at that point, and once it's ready, we'll pull it out and put it in the Cambro. So it's been 6 hours since we started this cook, and our internal temp has reached our target temp of 205, which is great. So I'm gonna pull this out of the cooker and put it in my Cambro. If you don't have a Cambro, any cooler will work. Just take the meat and wrap it in towels. And the reason you wrap it in towels is to hold some of the heat in, but also to protect the walls of your cooler from the heat of the meat. And then let it rest for 1 to 3 hours. Okay, here we are. It's been 2 hours. It's been resting for 2 hours in the Cambro, and now it is pulled apart and ready to eat. In fact, it's actually chopped apart. If you like it pulled, go just a little bit longer. Dave likes it better chopped, so I went with that. He's right, it's better chopped. I really like it. The texture is more of a meaty texture, a little bit like the point of a brisket. It's got a nice beefy flavor. It's very rich, it's very juicy. The bark on the outside, you can really taste, of course, the salt, but you can also taste the pepper and the garlic, and it's really, really good. What's great about this recipe is not only can you just eat it straight up, but you could do it on a sandwich, or you could do it in tacos, or on quesadillas, or nachos, or, you know, we love to do it in chili. It's a great recipe. It's a great addition to a chili recipe that really makes it pop. So you should give it a try. I think for me though, my favorite way to eat it is just straight up. So that's it for this one. If you have any other questions about this recipe or want to see any of our other recipes, check out our website at abcbarbecue.com. And remember, here at Adrenaline Barbecue Company, we didn't invent the kettle, we perfected it. Thanks for watching.